I don't stand side by side with nobody till I bleed with them first.
What did we just see? You probably think this world is a dream come true.
When I step into this ring, yeah, bro, I am addicted.
Don't sleep on Luca!
Maybe tomorrow we'll all wear 42.
If you fight for your dreams will fight for you.
The last time we covered the Philadelphia Phillies, they were just starting their series against the Los Angeles Dodgers. As we came to know, they ended up losing 13-4 in that first game. And things would only begin to get worse. They lost the next game 13-1, and they would lose the next one 10-6 off of a grand slam from Max Muncy. Now, definitely wasn't the way you wanted to see things go, especially when you look at the last episode. We were just talking about how the Philadelphia Phillies got above 500 for the first time. When they took that loss to the Dodgers on that Monday, it put them at 500. And the whole discussion was Bryce Harper's coming back. Everything seems to be going well. Everyone looks to, be getting into form at the right times. But what ends up going wrong? They end up losing the series to the Dodgers. They lose the series to the Red Sox, with only getting a win in the last game of the series, preventing the sweep. And as we know, yesterday they end up getting the win against Toronto in a real good game. That one was. Nola was pretty well. The hitting was pretty well. Nick Castellanos is still doing real well. But overall, what happened? What happened that caused this team, who was getting hot at the right time, was finally above 500 for a short bit? What caused them to fail? And where can the Phillies look to go from this point? Now, the Toronto series already looks promising, but still, what's going wrong and what can they do to change this? So, if you examine that series against the Dodgers, the first game obviously wasn't what you wanted to see out of the team, especially defensively, where they just were letting too many plays up. There was too many opportunities that they usually make those plays, and it was just getting right by them. And even worse was the plays they were letting up. It would often let the Dodgers get the corners filled. They wouldn't really get bases filled, but they'd get the guys on the corners, and that makes it way too difficult on the defense. And it led to a lot of situations where they had to pick and choose, and a lot of times runs ended up scoring because they were trying to focus on getting out of a lot of their innings. But I think the real big issue really came to a head, unfortunately, when Bryce Harper made his return. Now, this isn't to put any blame on Bryce Harper, obviously, but more so towards Rob Thompson and just the mindset he sort of has with this team. And that was the fact that as soon as Bryce Harper came back, he instantly switched up the lineup from what it was. If you look at the Monday game was Bryson Stott leading off with Trey Turner, Kyle Schwarber, Nick Castellanos, Brandon Marsh, JT Realmuto, Alec Boehm, Cody Clemens, and Edmundo Sosa. That was the lineup Monday before we knew Bryce Harper was coming back. Flash forward to the next day, Bryce Harper's back, and the lineup changes to Kyle Schwarber leading off, Trey Turner, Bryce Harper, Nick Castellanos, Bryson Stott, JT Realmuto, Alec Boehm, Brandon Marsh, Edmundo Sosa. Now, to some, that's only just switching two guys around, but also at the same time, that's quite the shuffle from your previous lineup just the day before, because it's not just switching Bryson Stott out of the leadoff spot. You moved Castellanos. Oh, Castellanos stayed at 4. and Bryce Harper filled in for 3, and then you moved Stott all the way down to 5. You moved Brandon Marsh down a bit in the lineup, all the way to the 8th spot, when he was previously batting at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th that previous game. Bowman, JT didn't really move around too much, but it's just this thing of like, he kind of went headstrong with this proposed lineup that was very similar to the lineup we ran last year in the final stretch of the season. But it's just kind of weird to see him throw Schwarber into that leadoff spot when he hasn't been in that leadoff spot for a while this season. And it very much continued into the Boston series. And, I'm not trying to say anything about the lineup, but I don't think it's too crazy of a coincidence to see that they lose those 3 games in Los Angeles. They lose 2 games in Boston, and then in the final game in Boston on Sunday, when they switched the lineup to Bryson Stott leading off, Trey Turner, Bryce Harper, Nick Castellanos, Kyle Schwarber at 5th, JT, Alec Boehm, Brandon Marsh, and Edmundo Sosa, they win that game by a large margin, from winning 6-1. I don't think it's any surprise there to realize that, this lineup is much more successful, especially given the fact the next game against the Blue Jays, they won. Now, this one was a bit closer of a game at one point, especially because there was the disastrous inning against the Blue Jays, where they got bases loaded at one point. But the Phillies held out, and they just kept it going. And, it's something to be said that, in this game, Kyle Schwarber ended up having to leave. He got hit by a pitch, on his foot, and he was obviously in a lot of pain, and just hoping the best for him. But, looking at, the difference in what these guys were able to do in this lineup versus when they just forcibly did, the other lineup. I mean, let's take it back to that final Boston game. You take Kyle Schwarber out of the leadoff spot, and what happens? Well, in that game, he gets 2 hits, 3 RBIs. That is quite the difference from the leadoff spot, where you look at when he led off in that very first game against the Dodgers. He had zeros all across the stat sheet, It was not looking well with him, and honestly, I feel kind of bad for Kyle Schwarber because his stats very much took a hit because of being in the leadoff spot for those couple games. Going into this game against the Blue Jays, they were showing the stats of each player, and they showed that Kyle Schwarber's average was .185, and it's just you just wonder how much of that was from him taking a hit off of being in that leadoff spot for just those short amount of games. And it's just it's such a difference to have him in this back spot, because you have guys who have been real good at getting on base, like Bryson Stott, like Nick Castellanos, even Bryce Harper, who right now I think has a hit streak going, a little bit of a hit streak going, I believe. You have Nick Castellanos, who is real good at getting on base. Let's double check this real quickly. In his last 5 games, other than one of the games in Boston, Castellanos has recorded at least 1 double in each of those games. He had a home run, obviously, yesterday against Toronto. He had 2 RBIs in that game as well. But yeah, he's had a double at least in he's had a double in 4 out of the 5 games, and currently he has 14 doubles on the season. So to have a guy like that in front of Schwarber, who he can get not only on base but get into scoring position, and then to have a guy like Schwarber behind him to be able to at any point send that ball flying, it's much better of a lineup and a difference to have at that point, you know, for him to be able to be in that position to drive runs in rather than, you know, this sort of thinking that having him at leadoff is an instant 1 point, you know, like as much as like he had a really odd but crazy season last year in the leadoff spot, I think where we have him now in this Toronto series and the last game in the Boston series is probably the best place we can have him. I think the lineup we have right now is pretty much not like perfect in a sense, but like for what players we have, it is perfect, you know. And then that turns to the other sort of issue at hand that I have. I need to double check what game it was, but another issue I have with Rob Thompson and the way he sort of shifted around his team is that I kind of need him to understand that Bryson Stott and Brandon Marsh are everyday players. They should be playing every day other than needing rest. And I bring this up because, you know, some people will be like, oh, what about the days they need rest and all that? I just remembered what game it was. They finished up the LA series on Wednesday. They get Thursday to rest. They come back to Boston on Friday. The lineup on that Friday had Josh Harrison at second and Guthrie at center field instead of Brandon Marsh. Bryson Stott and Brandon Marsh came in to pinch hit late in the inning when Boston got the lead, I believe. And it's like, to me, you need those players to like they need to be everyday players, you know. They're too kind of valuable to be like switching out, especially because of the mindset of, oh, they can't hit against certain pitchers. And it's like, I feel like I brought this up so much, but like it's just true in the fact that like, how will we ever know if someone like Marsh is actually not that good against, you know, lefties if you're never giving him the chance to give you a bigger sample size of him against lefties? And not only that, how can you ever expect him to improve against lefties if you don't put him out there? Like, I get we're really in like win now mode and really trying to make this push towards the playoffs to get back to the World Series and win it this time. So you maybe the mindset is you don't have much time to wait, but it's like the mindset I just have is, how can you expect a guy like Marsh to get better if you're not giving him those opportunities? And even worse, they subbed him out, and I believe it was this game where, you know, it's not to put the blame on either guy, but Schwarber and Guthrie were running after a fly ball, and there was miscommunication, and Schwarber ends up dropping the ball. And to me, it's like, if Marsh is in on that play, especially with his speed, he probably gets there before Schwarber to get it, and there's no confusion as to, you know, who's calling that ball. But also, you know, I'm also willing to admit there have been times where Marsh does make an error in the outfield, so it's not like he's perfect, but for the most part, you know, he makes those plays. So it's something that you especially like in a lot of the games that he misses, because there's like a lefty pitching, or like they're starting off with a lefty pitching, and they once they sub out, they bring them in to pinch hit. But like, there's something to be said where it's like you see how much not only his defense, but sometimes his hitting is missed in some of these games. You know, just yesterday in the Boston series, Marsh went off he had 2 RBIs in that game, and it ended up really helping us out late in that inning when he got that, you know. It helped us expand the lead, so we didn't have to worry too much about Toronto coming back, especially after that scary inning where bases were loaded. So when it comes to just examining this team, I think this should be the solidified lineup, and, you know, Bryce Harper will be more than comfortable in a lineup like this. I mean, we saw him, he hit a home run, I believe, was it Wednesday? Was it Wednesday against the Dodgers? I believe it was. But anyways, Harper's still taking his time. He's still really trying to get into his groove, and a lineup like this will help, where he can see Bryson Stott and Trey Turner and the pitches they take, especially with a guy like Bryson Stott, who, looking at the stats on the season, Bryson Stott currently this season has, I'm trying to look for, he's walked about 7 times, and Trey Turner has walked about 9 times. So those two guys see a lot of pitches, especially when they're at bat, and that allows for Harper to see, a good amount of pitches and see, what, kind of just, prepare himself. And then, of course, like I said, for a guy like Schwarber, he has a guy like Nick Castellanos. He has those 3 guys, and he has a guy like Nick Castellanos in front of him who are very good at, getting on base. And, could potentially see a situation where, any combination of those 4 guys are on base already, and that just sets him up even more. People talk about, Schwarber's just ability to be able to hit a home run out of nowhere. I would much rather have him hit those home runs with guys on base like Nick Castellanos or Bryce Harper or Trey Turner or Bryson Stott than leading off and just getting a solo home run. I want to see him get these multi-run home runs, and I think 5th is the perfect place. And I don't think he should look at it in a negative way. Now obviously I don't know what Kyle Schwarber's thinking when it comes to, how he feels when it comes to him being put in the lineup, or his position in the lineup. But to me, I don't think he should look at it as such a negative thing. It's honestly the perfect place for him, especially with the way this team is, I guess you could say, constructed. But, so far, like I said, you're waiting to see a bit more out of certain guys. But at the same time, I'm happy with what a lot of the different guys on this team are doing, and you can only be patient with the ones that you're hoping to see more out of, like Kyle Schwarber, Trey Turner. A lot of fans have kind of been hard on Trey Turner because they got used to the baseball classic and Trey hitting all those home runs, so they're like, well, why aren't we seeing all that here in the season? Just be patient, be patient with Schwarber as he gets adjusted to this position in the lineup, where I'm telling you, I have a feeling he'll be more than successful. Still, super proud supporter of the daycare, as Brandon Marsh has been doing real well. Bryson Stott has been doing real well. Alec Boehm has 25 RBIs on the season, and they're doing real well. So proud of them. Edmundo Sosa has just become such a great third baseman for us. Baseman. Hoping, again, got to be patient with these guys, but hoping to see a bit more defensive upside, I think, is what I want to use, because he's shown the upside. He's made some crazy plays, but there are also sometimes some plays where they just kind of get by him, and but he's doing pretty well. Edmundo Sosa's doing pretty well. The whole team as a whole, though in certain games they might get cold and look off, they still, for the most part, have been doing well. And if the last Boston game and this last Toronto game have anything to show, they're getting back on track. They're still 2 games under 500, but up next they got, again, one more game against Toronto. They got a series against the Rockies, where Ranger Suarez looks to be back, and I think with him coming back, I believe Matt Strahm gets pushed back to the bullpen, and Ranger becomes one of our starting pitchers, because I believe that's what commentary was mentioning. And then after that, we got a series against the Giants, who are in a somewhat similar position as us. Right now, I think they're 16-9. We're 4-6 in our last 10. They're 5-5 in their last 10. In the last 20, we're both 11-9. I think this is taking place at San Francisco, which could be a bit tough for us they're 10-9 at home, but we're 7-12 away. So but I don't know. This will be one of those, close series in a sense. Actually, I think the next time we cover the Phillies will be one game into that series. But for the most part, like I said, there was a lot that went wrong in this stretch. But from the very start, we knew it was going to be a tough stretch, especially going against LA. But still pretty confident in the team. Still pretty confident, especially in Nola and Wheeler. They kind of had tough series out there in LA, but Nola looked pretty good yesterday. He held up pretty well. He only let up one home run, I believe. And you already know everything's gonna look to be strengthened once Ranger Suarez comes back. Taijuan Walker, hoping to see a bit of improvement from him, especially that LA game that he was pitching was very tough. Matt Strahm was obviously kind of frustrated after his outing. I believe it was in LA, but it might have been Boston. It was 1-2 where, I think he only got like 73 pitches in. He was seemingly upset, but it's not much you can do when a game goes that way. But like I said, there's a lot that's going on with this team, but hopefully by the next time we cover, they've put all the pieces together just like I know they can.